When a black boy shouted "Don't drink" that, no one at the event expected what would happen next. It was a sunny afternoon at one of the most exclusive charity events in the city, held in a luxurious garden overlooking the river, the kind of place where champagne glasses clink in the sun and conversations are punctuated by discreet laughter. People in suits and designer dresses moved between tables adorned with floral arrangements, while waiters served sophisticated appetizers. But for Malik, a black boy of barely 12 years, the scene was a distant reality. With an old faded t-shirt and a box of water bottles, he walked between the parked cars trying to sell what he could to get money for his next meal. Malik knew he was not welcome there. The security guards watched him closely as if he were an intruder in forbidden territory, but hunger and determination were stronger than fear. He needed to sell those bottles to ensure something to eat. Later, as he walked the perimeter of the event, something caught his attention. On the other side of the garden, a woman of imposing presence captured all eyes. It was Evelyn Monroe, a multimillionaire famous for her philanthropy but also for her reserved and difficult personality. Sitting at a table with other influential guests, Evelyn seemed untouchable, wrapped in an aura of power and elegance. She wore a sophisticated black dress and her jewels shone like stars in the light of day. A glass of white wine rested on the table while the conversations around her flowed like a calm river. Malik watched from afar without knowing very well why. When a tall, well-dressed man approached Evelyn's table, he had a calm expression, but something about him seemed out of place. Malik saw him lean over the table, apparently ordering, and for a brief moment his hand slid over Evelyn's wine glass. It was a quick movement, almost imperceptible, but it activated a gum in the boy's mind. Malik frowned, trying to understand what he had just seen. Something was not right. Evelyn, distracted in a conversation with another guest, did not notice the man. Quickly walked away, blending into the crowd, but Malik remained fixed on him. His heart raced. He couldn't explain it, but his instinct screamed at him that he had to do something. When Evelyn reached out for the glass, Malik sprang into action. He dropped the case of water to the floor and ran to the table, shouting, "Don't drink that, please don't drink it." Malik's voice cut through the air like a blade. The murmur of conversation ceased instantly. All gazes turned to him. Evelyn stood motionless with the glass just inches from his lips. His gaze was a mix of surprise and irritation as he watched the panting, barefoot boy standing next to his table. "Who let that boy in?" asked one of the guests with obvious disdain. A security guard was already approaching to take Malik out, but he insisted with wide eyes and a trembling voice, "Please ma'am, I saw him. He put something in your glass. I swear I saw him. Don't drink that, please." The silence that followed was almost palpable. Evelyn looked at Malik, trying to assess if the security guard grabbed the boy's arm, but he resisted, looking directly into the eyes of the billionaire. "I know that no one believes me because I'm just a bum," he said in a firm voice despite the fear, "but I couldn't stay quiet. I saw what he did." Evelyn, visibly disconcerted, she put the cup back on the table. "Let go of the boy," she ordered with a tone that did not admit discussion. The security guard hesitated but obeyed. Evelyn turned to Malik, crossing her arms. "Very well, boy, you say you've seen something. Who saw it?" Malik pointed in the direction where the man had disappeared. "It was him. The tall man in the gray suit manipulated your glass when you were distracted." The guests began to murmur again, and their eyes turned to where Malik was pointing, but the man had already disappeared. Evelyn narrowed her eyes distrustfully, but something in Malik's determination made her doubt whether to discard his story. "Bring that man," she ordered one of the security guards, "and have them analyze that glass immediately." The atmosphere of the event changed completely. The relaxed atmosphere gave way to an air of tension and distrust. Malik stayed where he was, nervous but determined to prove that he wasn't lying. He knew he had done the right thing even though no one believed him. Meanwhile, Evelyn remained silent, looking at the cup as if it were a puzzle she had to solve, and although her expression was difficult to decipher, Malik realized that for the first time she was looking at him as someone who was worth listening to. Evelyn observed Malik's face with an intensity that made the boy feel even smaller, but he maintained his posture despite his shaking hands. Meanwhile, the security guard she had sent returned to the garden, shaking his head. "The man is gone, ma'am. We have searched the perimeter, but he is not here," he said with an embarrassed air. The multimillionaire frowned and turned her attention to the glass that was still on the table. The memory of Malik's determined look resonated in her mind. Something about that boy and the way he had risked everything to warn her seemed truer than she wanted to admit. "Bring an expert immediately," said Evelyn, and her tone silenced everyone around her. "I want them to analyze that glass right now and tell the security at the entrance that no one leaves until everything is cleared up." The murmurs among the guests intensified. Some looked at Malik with disdain while others seemed to be torn between skepticism and curiosity. For many he was nothing more than a street kid who had invaded the event, but for others Evelyn's inflexible security and Malik's own behavior raised enough doubts as to that no one dared to ignore what he had said. Minutes later, a chemist hired by Evelyn's team arrived at the place carrying a portable analysis kit. He analyzed the glass under the watchful eyes of everyone while silence filled the room. Evelyn remained seated with a serious expression. alternating her gaze between the chemist and Malik. The boy meanwhile he remained standing by the table holding his old case of water bottles as if it were a shield. He did not look away although he could feel the weight of the judgment around him. After a few minutes the pharmacist looked up. His expression was a mix of concern and shock. Mrs. Marlove began hesitantly, there is this of a toxic substance in the drink. I still can't confirm what it is without a more detailed analysis, but I can say that it shouldn't be here. The impact of his words was like a bomb. A collective sigh resonated in the garden, and the guests began to murmur louder. Evely remained motionless for a few seconds before slowly getting up. She had a hard expression, and her lips pressed into a thin line. Call the police, she ordered her security guard. I want you to investigate this incident immediately. As the security guard walked away to carry out his order, Evely looked back at Malik. Now there was something different in his mixture of respect and curiosity. Really, have you seen what happened? He asked in a softer but authoritative voice. Malik felt strongly. Yes ma'am, I saw him pour something into his cup. He thought no one was looking, but I was. Evely, he tilted his head slightly, studying the boy. Why didn't you shut up? You could have just left and avoided all this trouble. Malik hesitated, his hands clenching the sides of the box. He knew he only had one chance to say something that made sense to her because no one else was going to say anything. He replied finally, and if it was my mother sitting here I would want someone to do the same for her. Silence returned to the room. Evely took a deep breath, processing the boy's words as the distant sound of sirens indicated that the police were on their way. By the time the police arrived the event was in a controlled frenzy. The guests whispered in groups, some avoided looking at Malik while others they began to approach, curious to know more about the boy who had saved the billionaire. Evely explained the situation to the agents, handing them the cup for forensic analysis and describing the man Malik had identified. We have cameras all over Evo. Slowly, if this man really did what the boy said, we will find the recording, one of the agents assured. The attention then turned to Malik. An agent approached him with a stern but not hostile look. Are you sure of what you saw, boy? Can you describe the man in more detail? Malik nodded, accurately describing what he remembered. The gray suit. The hair was combed back. The shoes were polished. As he spoke, he felt Evelyn's eyes stare at him as if she were trying to see beyond what he was saying, trying to understand who he really was. The next few minutes became increasingly tense. The agents were checking the cameras. The guests kept whispering and Evely remained at Malik's side as if she wanted to make sure they weren't ignoring him. When one of the agents returned with the camera images, the confirmation was immediate. The man described by Malik. He had indeed poured something into the cup. He hasn't left the perimeter yet, the officer said. Looking at his colleagues, let's track him down. As the police moved quickly to find the suspect, Evely turned to Malik. Her serious expression softened a little and she put a hand on his shoulder. Today you saved my life, she said with a sincerity that made Malik swallow hard. I won't forget it. Malik just nodded wordlessly for a moment. He felt that for the first time in a long time someone was really watching him. The search for the suspect tensed the atmosphere even more. The guests murmured nervously while the police officers dispersed through the place, analyzing every corner in search of the man who had tried to poison Evelyn. Malik remained close to the multimillionaire with his hands still clutching the old box of bottles like a shield. He could feel everyone's eyes on him, but now they weren't just looks of contempt. There was curiosity, respect, and even a little admiration. Evely for her part seemed lost in her thoughts. With her gaze fixed on the policeman but reflecting on something deeper, she finally turned to Malik. How old are you? She asked in a tone that didn't sound exactly carefree but wasn't harsh either. 12 ma'am, answered Malik hesitantly. And you sell bottles of water every day? She continued. Whenever I can, that's how my sister and I survive. Her answer was direct but her words carried weight as if they contained a story that he wasn't sure about sharing with his sister. Asked Evely, surprised. Where is Malik now? He looked away for a moment before answering. At home. I mean where we are staying for now. I do what I can to take care of her, but it is not always easy. His voice wavered but he recovered quickly as if he was used to hiding any sign of weakness. Evely remained silent, assimilating his words. Something in Malik's tone and the firmness with which he spoke seemed to touch something deep inside her. The police finally found the suspect. He had tried to camouflage himself among the guests backstage, but the security cameras had given him away. When the officers handcuffed him, he tried to keep his composure, but it was evident that panic was taking hold of him. You have nothing against me. This is a mistake, my shouted as they escorted him to the exit. One of the officers approached Evely, maintaining his professional attitude. Mrs. Marlove, we have managed to capture him. He denies everything, but the videos and the boy's testimony are solid evidence. We will continue from there. Evely nodded, but her attention was still focused on Malik. She knew that without him the situation could have ended tragically. When the policeman walked away, Evely looked back at the boy. Malik, I want you to tell me the truth. You do this every day? You walk the streets alone selling water for a living? She nodded, her eyes shining with a mix of pride and resignation. I don't have many options. My sister is small, she can't work. And she paused and took a deep breath before continuing. It's what we have to do. The sincerity of his voice impressed Evely. In a way she didn't expect. For years he had accumulated wealth and influence, building an empire with fierce determination, but there in front of a boy who barely had enough to survive she felt small in comparison to his value. When the act dissipated and the guests left the place, Evely called one of her personal assistants. "I want you to investigate everything about this boy," she said, pointing at Malik. "Find out where he lives, with whom, and what his needs are." The assistant seemed to hesitate for a moment, but nodded quickly. "Yes, ma'am." Malik. She watched the interaction cautiously. She didn't understand why Evely was so interested in him, but she knew something was about to change. "Malik," said Evely, turning back to him, "today you saved my life. Without you I wouldn't be here now, and probably no one would have done anything. I'm not going to let it go just like that." The boy frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" Evely put her hand on his shoulder, this time with a softer touch. "I want to help you and your sister. No one should live like you today. You saved me and now it's my turn to give it back to you." Malik stood still for a moment, trying to assimilate her words. He had never expected something like this, especially from someone as powerful and distant as Evelyn. "And I don't know what to say." Evely smiled for the first time that night, a small but genuine smile. "Now you don't have to say anything. Let me help you." While Malika felt timidly, she didn't realize that that moment would mark the beginning of a change she would never have imagined. In the following days Malik's life began to change in a way she never imagined possible. Evely, true to her word, mobilized her team to investigate the situation of the boy and his sister. Discovered that both lived in a small room in a temporary shelter, sharing the space with other families in conditions equally difficult. Was Malik's sister Amara, who was only 6 years old and suffered from severe asthma, aggravated by the precarious environment in which they lived. Evely wasted no time. Within a few days she had found a new home for Malik and Amara, a modest but comfortable and safe space where the children could start from scratch. She also hired a private doctor to take care of them, Amara's health, and make sure she got the treatment she needed. But Evely knew that providing a home wasn't enough. She wanted to give Malik the chance to build a future for himself. One morning while she was helping Mara pack her new backpack, a limousine stopped in front of her house. Evely got out of the vehicle, impeccable as always, but with a loving look that Malik was beginning to recognize. She carried a briefcase in one hand and a bag in the other. Malik said with a discreet smile, "I have something for you." He ran out to the balcony and Amara followed him closely with curiosity reflected on her face. Evely handed him the bag. Inside there were new clothes, but not just any clothes. It was a school uniform from one of the best institutions in the city. "What is this?" Malik asked, holding the uniform as if it were made of glass. "It's the next step," said Evely, handing him the folder. "You will be admitted to St. James Academy. It's one of the best schools in the city with full scholarships for talented children. You will have everything you need to study, and if you put your mind to it you can go wherever you want." Mal remained silo, looking at the uniform and the folder with his mind spinning. He had dreamed of opportunities like this, but he never thought they could come true. "And I don't know if I can do it," he said at last in a deep voice. "I don't know if I'm good enough." Evely knelt down beside him and held his shoulders firmly. "Malik, you have already proven to be stronger and smarter than many adults. I know you saved my life with your courage and your attention. If you can do that, you can do anything. Just promise me you will try." He nodded, still struggling to process it all. Amara gave her brother a big smile and hugged him. "You can do it, Malik. I know you can." During the following months Malik began his new journey. Adjusting to school was a challenge. At first he felt out of place among the other students, many of whom came from rich and influential families, but little by little he found his place. His determination and intelligence made him stand out, and soon he began to earn the respect of his classmates and teachers. Evely continued to be present in his life, not only as a distant benefactor but as a mentor. She visited him, he regularly helped her with her homework and encouraged her to dream big. To her, Malik was more than just a reward for saving her life. He was a reminder that anyone, regardless of their background, could achieve great things with the right opportunities. Years later, Malik, now a young graduate full of ambition, took the stage. At a conference on social justice and opportunities for vulnerable youth, he shared his story. From the days he sold bottles of water on the street to the moment when the kindness of a stranger changed his life. "My story is a reminder," he told the crowd, "that each of us can make a difference. Sometimes all we need is someone to believe in us. Someone to see us when the world ignores us." In the audience, Evely watched on, moved. She never regretted the day she decided to help that brave boy. Now, seeing him inspire so many people, she knew she had made the right decision. If this story has touched your heart, share it with someone you think needs to hear it. Acts of kindness can transform lives and create ripples of impact that extend far beyond what you can imagine. We imagine, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to learn more inspiring stories like this. Until next time.